Hello creators, and welcome to another Video Creators Podcast episode. Every Tuesday we got new ones of these just to help you guys learn how to grow your YouTube audience so you can spread a message that reaches people and changes their lives. And today we have a really great interview with a guy named Dr. Dan Robinson. Hey Dr. Dan, how are you, man?
Hey Tim, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a little late here, but it's like early for you in Australia, so we make the time difference work, and we're gonna have fun here. If you guys aren't familiar with Dr. Dan, I'll put a link to his channel down below. It's called Voice Essentials, and he is a singing voice specialist. And Dan, what kind of things could we expect over at your channel before we dive into stuff here?
So at my channel, I'm a great believer in everyone has a voice, and so we work on a whole range of voice technique and vocal health videos, and it's all designed to have the voice, your voice, realize its full potential, and to have you singing longer and stronger. And yeah, it's a great community that we've got happening over at Voice Essentials. Yeah,
it's awesome. I've been following it for a little bit now since you and I have connected. For you guys who aren't familiar with Dr. Dan and things, so I got an email from him, I don't know how long ago, maybe a few months ago now at this point.
Yeah.
And he's like, Tim, I love your stuff. I've been following your videos, but he's like, your voice sounds just so tired. And I was like, I wrote him back. It's like, well, yeah, you know, I'm recording these at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning after my kids are in bed and the house is finally quiet. You know, like that's when I get to shoot these. And your response to me was something like, no, like that's not what I mean. And you actually went into this other thing. What did you tell me, if you remember back and put you on the spot here? But what was your response when I wrote you back? And was like, yeah, that's not that kind of tired.
Yeah, it's not. It was. I was hearing I mean, you know, doing these things at 1 a.m. in the morning isn't going to help, right?
Sure.
And you know, having seven kids on the fly is certainly going to make you physically tired, and that's going to have an impact on your voice. But it was a general raspiness in your sound, and I could hear what I would identify as some swelling in your vocal folds, and some fluid retention in the level of the vocal folds that were just causing what we refer to as your fundamental frequency to just be a little laboured, and a little bit lower than we would normally expect to hear Tim Schmoyer. Right. And I do follow your channel quite closely at Video Creators, and the reason I made contact with you is because you've been so helpful to my channel, and so I wanted to give a little bit back. And because I do know your channel for a couple of years now, I could hear the voice just slowly but surely getting, you know, more challenged as time went on. And so yeah, I dropped an email, and much to my great delight, you replied.
Well, I get a lot of emails, and I actually have someone on my team who just manages my inbox, but I did manage to see that one. And I checked out your channel, and I was like, okay, so, and I learned a few things about you. One, you have a doctorate in singing and vocal instruction. And you're like on the board for all of Australia or something for singing and voice instruction and things?
Yeah, so currently I'm on the Australian Voice Association board. So we are, the Australian Voice Association is an interdisciplinarian group. It includes ears, nose and throat doctors, speech therapists. In Australia, they're to be called speech pathologists. In a lot of other places, they're called speech and language therapists. And then also singing teachers, but not only singing teachers, acting voice specialists. And so we service, you know, that coming together of those professions. And which is why I refer to myself as a singing voice specialist, not just simply a singing teacher, because I do work in team with ears, nose and throat doctors and speech therapists in helping voices to be rehabilitated, sick voices that have found themselves, you know, running aground and you know, through a whole range of reasons. Right.
Well, one of the things that you said to me, I think it was when we did our first session. I've been working with Dr. Dan, you guys, for I don't know, a few months now, doing calls maybe once a month or once every few weeks or so. because the thing that kind of got me, I never thought of before, is you said, Tim, your voice is your most essential business tool. And I was like, what? My business tool? You're like, it's the tool that you use for everything, whether it's consultations, whether it's making videos, whether it's coaching, whether it's communicating with my family, like whatever it is. And that's not a business thing necessarily, but like and there's no anything else that you have in your business you would invest into. You would, have good camera, good microphones, good computer, good internet connection. Like you're making an investment to improve those aspects of your content, of your videos, and of your channel. But you're like, but you also need to do that with your voice, because none of those things really matter if your voice doesn't sound good, if it sounds tired, if it's not communicating well, or worst case scenario, you lose it completely, right? And you maybe even have to have surgery and things like that, which I was like, oh, that's only happens to people who are just crazy talking all the time. But then I was at VidCon this past year, and it was and you and I have been working together, and I noticed my voice was starting to go. I was starting to lose it. I was starting to feel like that tension and some pain, and just like I was on the cusp of starting to lose my voice. And so I said, no, you know what? And I was drinking like all sorts of water, like you've instructed me, which we'll talk about some of these things here in a little bit, guys. Yeah. But doing everything that we had talked about, and two YouTube creators at this private party at VidCon tried talking to me, and I was just like, no, hold on, a little bit. And both of them were like, oh, I totally know. Like and both of them had surgery on their voice as YouTube creators, because they had things, I don't know what they're called, but something developed on their vocal folds, and they had to like go on speech, like not talking not forever, but for like a really long time, and have surgery. He's like, they both understood totally. Do not talk, leave. Like no offense taken at all. And so I was like, wow, I never even, like, this is a part of YouTube that some of these creators are like, I've never heard before. And I just met two just by saying I need to stop, that they say, yes, I had surgery on my throat, on my voice or whatever it's on, for this. Well, I've noticed a big difference personally since we started working together. Like I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even on my radar. It's just like I just talk as part of it, like I'm talking all day in consultations and meetings and interviews and podcasts and videos and my family. Like I don't know, but I probably have a higher word quota per day than the average male, not because I'm extroverted. I'm actually really introverted, but it's just just due to the nature of my profession and my stage of life and everything. So yeah, I've noticed a big difference about something I wasn't even paying attention to before, and it was great. So thank you for that.
And I've noticed a difference in your voice, and if people are interested, they should go back about 5 months, 6 months, and have a listen to one of your pre-record videos and compare it to one of your most recent pre-record videos. I think people would hear a difference in not the content, but the tone and the quality of your, what we refer in my business as your phonation. And it's cleaner, it has less rasp, sort of a less raspy edge, and it's sitting a bit higher again. It's we've got the old Tim back, which is good.
Oh, thank you. Cool. So I want to get into some tips and some of the advice that you shared with me, and the types of things you share on your YouTube channel as well, about how we can really just make our voice sound amazing and get that, what did you call it? Not the tonality, but the phonality or something?
Phonation.
Phonation, yeah. Just really get that, clear, crisp. I don't really know how to describe it, but like I feel the difference now. Like right now I'm kind of borderline, like it's not great, but it's not terrible, but it's kind of like, right. So I got my water here, stuff like that. But get that so it just like really resonates when people hear it. So before we dive into all your practical tips and what we're going to do to improve this, let's kind of talk about the other extreme first of all, and second, what can happen to a creator if they don't care for their voice? People who are like me, hadn't even considered, even thought about the voice being a tool that they should care for and invest into.
If you just keep driving your voice, you will ultimately reach, if you keep driving the voice hard, you will ultimately, not all, and it has to be said, we're talking about risk factors here. Not every voice will deteriorate into beyond wear and tear, into what today's space refers to as a disordered voice or a disturbed voice. We used to call them damaged voices. For some reason, that's gone out of vogue. Not every voice is going to deteriorate it into disorder. But certainly the end result for some voice, and the creators you were talking to at the after party, we can have things happen to the voice which include vocal fold hemorrhage. I haven't included these in the playlist that I've given you, Tim, to put in the description section. But if you go to my channel, I've got videos on these subjects. Vocal fold hemorrhage. Now, a vocal fold hemorrhage can happen in an instant. So that's where literally the vocal folds bleed out. And so the voice user will typically experience a sudden shift in their ability to create sound for speech and singing. Adele is a good example of someone who's recently experienced that, and she had to cancel a couple of shows at Wembley for that reason. This is going about 3 months ago. We can develop over time. We can develop things called vocal fold nodules. For those of people who have watched Pitch Perfect, the movie, they were referred to in that movie as nodes. We tend to call them nodules in the business. And they're a development of some swellings, generally in the first third point of the vocal folds. And they're a rubbing, and they're basically the development of a bruise and then a callousing of that bruise. And that will leave the voice feeling really, like this. And so things like these, when the voice deteriorates to that level, typically we have to, with nodules, we'd first intervene with therapy, voice therapy, and look to rehabilitate the voice by virtue of that way. Sometimes the vocal nodules have become calloused and we do need to operate. Hemorrhage can often, that's when we'd need to stop talking altogether. Yeah. And a lot of these challenges do have a rehabilitation journey which takes time, and that's the thing, for creators, for those of us, I know I aim at 2 to 3. I usually achieve 2 videos a week. We don't have time to stop. But the rehabilitation of a voice can take anywhere up to 3 to 6 months. Yeah. That could really, screw up with a person's schedule for YouTube. So the ideal is to not have the voice go down that track. The idea is to stop the voice before we get to that point and not need to have surgery. Now, there are things that can happen with the voice. So, for example, a vocal fold hemorrhage can actually occur simply by sneezing incorrectly.
Ooh. Oh, boy. So, now I'm going to be really scared.
There are things like nodules are often brought about because the voice user has a functional issue where they're using their voice in a less than optimal manner. Something like a vocal fold hemorrhage, however, can occur through no fault of the singer themselves. You can make the voice more susceptible to vocal fold hemorrhage, but look, there are only a couple of examples of voice disorders. Hopefully it gives people an indication as to, this is pretty serious, and it is true to say, most voices, won't experience this, but that doesn't mean that all voices won't experience it, and hence the story of the 2 creators you talked to. Yeah. If you use your voice enough, the wear and tear can be significant. And so learning to hit with number 1 tip, it's learning to speak well. You've got to learn to speak well, and that is having the voice up and forward, not letting the voice continually deteriorate and that sort of vocal fry at the end, and for some young women, and I see this a lot on on YouTube. You'll see young female creators. They've got that vocal fry that sort of, it sounds sexy and it sounds intelligent, but it's actually wearing and tearing on the voice. And so we've got to be really careful of that, looking for nice, clean phonation, as you can hopefully hear in my sound, despite the fact that I'm still getting over we've had a massive flu season here in Brisbane, Australia, and so I got hit with it. But it's keeping the voice nice and clean, which is probably the number one tip.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's get into some of the tips about how to actually keep the voice nice and clean and sounding healthy and strong and communicating the emotion and the feeling and everything that you want to communicate. So what are those first top things that you recommend that creators just start doing?
Okay, so let's talk first of all to that water bottle that you had, and I've got mine sitting right.
Glass, but yeah,
that's all right. So you want to get into the habit of carrying a water bottle everywhere you go, and we want to be drinking between, and this is unadulterated H2O. We want to drink between 2 to 3 liters a day, ish. Now we actually that's making sure that we hydrate above and beyond what the hydration levels we're getting through our food and other beverages. This is just straight H2O. In the world of singing teaching, we have this little saying, it's been around for a couple of centuries, pee clear, sing clear. Yeah, you want to have nice pale urine. That indicates a level of hydration, which is good. If your urine is like got a deep yellow to it, the chances are you're dehydrated. It's really important to hydrate because when you drink water, it takes 20 to 30 minutes for that water. The water never touches your larynx. The water goes down behind the larynx into your stomach, and it takes 20 to 30 minutes for that water to assimilate into your bloodstream, which then hydrates the larynx. So it takes time. So when we're talking about drinking the 2 to 3 liters of water, we're talking about sipping that 2 to 3 liters throughout the day. You don't want to be sort of guzzling it. If you guzzle it, your body's just going to go, oh, I've got more water than I need, and it just gets rid of it in the manner that we all know. So it's really a matter of keeping the voice hydrated, and that helps with a thing called phonatory threshold pressure. And that is the amount of pressure, that the vocal folds need in order to oscillate at a balanced mode, in a balanced way. If the voice, it's a bit like the engine in your car. If you remove the oil from the sump in your car, then those engine parts are going to start to wear and tear, and the engine's going to have to work harder. Eventually that engine without oil is going to seize. The parts are going to get too hot and they're going to seize. It's similar, of course it's not the same, but it's a similar sort of idea with the vocal folds being lubricated, and as I said, they're lubricated by virtue of the body's hydration throughout their by virtue of the water intake. So you've got to hydrate. Yeah.
So if like when I'm at VidCon, I'm just walking around with that water bottle. I am just sipping on it all day long. One of the problems I was running into, which you told me about, was you're going to have to go to the bathroom a lot too, which is really convenient, like every half hour. But that was because I hadn't taken enough time beforehand to hydrate, so that by the time I got there, like, didn't you tell me it takes about, if you do this for about a month, like you stop having to go to the bathroom so often because your body starts getting used to having the water and retains it more properly?
Your body starts to learn to retain that level of hydration. And so, it's, when you first start doing this, it is going to hit your bladder in a way that you haven't experienced before, and you are going to have to go to the toilet a little bit more regularly. But
a lot more regularly.
Over time, your body is going to learn to retain that hydration, and those little trips to the loo aren't going to be so prevalent.
So at the very least, though, like if they know they're gonna, like if I know I'm gonna be shooting videos in the evening, then like a few hours at nothing else, just start sipping water, getting like that water into my system, into my vocal folds, and so that everything's like lubed up and smooth and kind of ready to go. If nothing else, bare minimum. But yeah, just keeping it hydrated is way better for your body overall.
Absolutely. The hydration is, and it's something that we can all do.
Yep.
It's just a habit.
I mean, that was one of the main things, I think, and then some of these other things I'm sure you'll share too. Like this past VidCon and CVX Live, those are the first times I've ever gone to a conference and not lost my voice within I didn't lose my voice at all. Usually I lose it by like the first evening, the first night, I can feel it starting to go. And then the next day, sometime in the morning or afternoon, it's gone. Like I'm just like, rasping. But I made it through both events. And I think a lot of it, made it through both events without losing my voice. And I think a lot of it is due to just, drinking water the whole time, plus some of these other things. So what else would you recommend?
Yeah, so the other thing that you and I talked about before you went to those conferences was two things. We talked about vocal pacing and vocal rest. So it's really important to remember, firstly, your voice is biological. It's anatomical. You cannot, you could not, start running today and just run for the next 24 hours and expect to be okay. And yet that's often what we expect of our voice. We're not pacing our voice properly. And so understanding that, for example, if you're about to have a conference where you're going to have to talk, in your case, then we talked about, okay, you're going to have increased vocal load during that period of time. And every voice has a budget. And some voices have higher levels of budget than others, and we can learn to get more revenue into our budget, but at the end of the day we all have a budget. And what we've got to make sure is that vocal load, that vocal spend that we have, doesn't cause the voice to go into credit. Because if your voice is constantly living in credit, that's when you're going to run into trouble. So what we can do is, when we know that we're going to, for example, let's just say you're going to be batching a whole heap of videos as a video creator. I batch my pre-records, and I'll do 5 videos in a sitting. So it'll generally take me about 4 or 5 hours to do that. So let's just say I know I'm going to have 4 hours of solid talking, for that period of time. I'm sure there are many video creators that can do it quicker than I can. But nonetheless, let's say for 4 hours I'm just going solid at it. That is a lot of vocal load. I'm spending a lot of vocal budget in that period of time. I need to then give my voice opportunity to recover, to rest. I need to pace then the rest of the day, because I know I've already spent heavily in the morning. In your case, it was because we talked about the fact that you were going to have, you're going to be speaking and doing seminars and workshops, etc. And so we talked about, okay, are you going to then immediately step off stage and then start talking to people afterwards? Probably. So then what we've got to do is look to see if we can remove you from that group for short periods of vocal rest, so that the voice, because what happens is when the voice is being used, it's oscillating. I'm not giving a great picture there, but it's oscillating. As I'm talking now, my voice is oscillating at around about 120, 150 times per second. So it's really having to do a lot of movement, and that movement has a phonatory threshold, which then, if I'm driving that voice too hard, the voice starts to protect itself by accumulating and retaining fluid. What we've got to do is give the voice opportunity to move that fluid on. But if you just keep hammering away at it, and for example, if you're at a conference and you arrive in the morning, and even if you don't have to present, you can still find yourself, nattering away at the conference. You're typically in that space. We talked about the fact that it's a really loud space.
Very loud, yeah.
People talking. And for you to be able to hear yourself, you need to be able to speak at 20 decibels louder than the surrounding audio landscape.
That's why some of these I got to get like right up into someone's ear and yell for them to hear me. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, right? So what we talked about, and you remember I said, grab that person and take them to a quieter spot. There's always quieter spots in conference venues. If you're, for example, if you're a YouTube creator and you go out for a meal, or you go out to a club, if you don't have the conversation right in front of the loudspeaker, the front of house, go and have a conversation out of the room. Be smart about where you're using your voice, so that you don't find yourself driving the voice too hard. And so you and I talked about those things. So vocal pacing and vocal rest are really, really important. And then you want to avoid things like what's really high budget, what's really high spend on the voice is talking on the phone. So you want to avoid that. You'll find that talking, I always find, because I do live YouTube things once a week, I find that my live YouTube events, my voice gets to the end of those quite fatigued, because I don't know if you've noticed that for yourself, Tim, but because it's high energy, but you are talking constantly for 30, 40 minutes, that's high spend.
Yeah.
So immediately following that, you want to do some, there are some warm down activities that we might be able to get to a little bit later that are really positive. The other things that are going to really wear and tear and wear the voice down quite considerably are coughing and so clearing your throat particularly. So
right, you told me, he's like, because usually I would go like before I start speaking, before I start talking, and you're like, no, don't do that. You're like, swallow instead. And I was like, okay. So try to get in the habit of like, right before I talk. Like,
now we can learn to do a silent clear, where we just use a small puff of air, but I always go to the swallow first. And
it's because it's better for your vocal folds, right?
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
Just because,
when you clear the throat like that, the vocal folds get slammed together. Yeah, and that is highly abrasive, rather bruising. It's going to cause the vocal folds to respond by retaining some fluid to go into a protectionary mode. Fluid retention in the vocal folds, for the most part, is the enemy. We're wanting to keep the vocal folds nice and supple and clear of retained fluid like that. So, and then coughing, like I've had this flu, I'm as we're talking now, I've been clearing my throat constantly to try and keep my involuntary response to cough in check. So you want to avoid coughing and keep that in check as well.
Yeah. Cool. And then you had me do a few exercises then too before I would I'd go back to my hotel room for like a little bit of downtime, which is something I don't normally do at these events, because I'm here, I pay this money to be here, or I'm getting paid this money to be here, whatever the case may be. I want to be available and accessible to other people, and I don't want to spend it in my hotel room. But this past time, I was like, okay, no, in order for me to be able to speak with people later, I need to be able to go away for a little bit. So I go back to my hotel room, not only just to have some vocal rest for a little bit, but also to work on some other things. What were some of those things that you can help? And maybe even between videos, if you're doing like batch shooting, these are the types of things you can do to kind of not reset, but kind of make things a little heal a little bit, I guess. What are some of those things?
So we talked about using straws and again, there are dedicated videos on my channel about this, but we'll do one activity just to show everyone how the straw works. Just a little point on what you just said, Tim, is that vocal health needs to be. You've got to think about your vocal health not in the moment. You've got to constantly think about your vocal health over your lifetime. It's very easy to be caught in the moment to go, well, I just want to, it's really important that I have this conversation today. And then you end up having that conversation and the next conversation. And before you know it, you go home with no voice. It's important to remember that when you get home, you are still going to have to use your voice. And so it's really important that you think long term. With my clients, I often say many of the exercises and activities that I give students to do are actually pretty straightforward. I'm a great believer in keeping it simple. What's not easy to do is to be disciplined in doing them. It's being disciplined in removing yourself from the loud space. It's being disciplined in doing the activities. That's actually the hard bit. And so, I encourage everyone, be disciplined, and you'll get the benefits.
Yeah. So what did you do with the straw then?
So with the straw, we're just going to do one activity because I think this will be the safest one to show without being able to review it with anyone. So you just grab a straw, so you can see that that's just a normal drinking straw with a little, it doesn't have to have the bendy bit, but mine does.
Yep.
And all we're doing, and you don't need a keyboard, you don't need anything, all we're doing is humming into the straw. Now what we want to be careful of is that we're not humming through our nose. Yeah? That we're humming through the straw. So what you can do is hold your nose. This will look funny.
You do this in private when no one's watching.
Yeah, just like we are right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I do it in private. You have the straw. I don't have mine out. So,
so what that's doing is it's causing some back pressure, which is causing a widening of the vocal tract, and in turn is keeping everything nice. And it's causing the vocal folds to oscillate in a really balanced manner, which is meaning that each side of the vocal fold is massaging each other. And it's actually helping to bring the vocal folds back to a really balanced, even state. It's something that you can do before you actually use your voice, and it's something you can do after you've used your voice. Really, really effective. It's called straw phonation.
I know that like after shooting 1 or 2 videos, I start to feel it. Like I can like not just hear it, but I can feel like I have it right now actually. Yeah. Because I've been going all day and not drinking enough. But
thank you for your admission there.
Sure, just being honest. But what I'll do then before I shoot the next video is I take the straw and I just hum, and we talked about a few other humming types of things too, which people can find in a playlist we're going to share with them in a second, I'm sure, and other things on your channel. But just doing some of those, just doesn't take long, just a few minutes, and I can feel my voice, like I call it my throat. It's not my throat, but like when I say voice, I'm not talking about the sound waves. You know what I'm talking about, like that thing inside I guess it's the vocal folds. They just feel less irritated, less scratchy, less like I need to cough, and it just starts sounding smoother. I can hear my voice starting to come back a little bit better, and then I'll do that for a little while before I jump into the next video, or before, in my case, I'm doing some of these consultations with creators. I've got like 6, 7, 8 all back to back. And I'm standing there for 10 hours sometimes doing these sessions, and I take like 10, 15 minutes between each one to do that and grab another drink.
You've got to remember that the larynx is mostly functionally driven by muscle. Muscle only can operate one way. Muscles can only contract. Yeah, they need another muscle to work in team with it to detract. That's not a word, but to actually pull it out of that contraction. Yeah. And so what happens is muscles just want to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and these activities like the straw activity, which fall into a family called semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, they help to release that tension and bring the muscles back into a balanced state, and that's why you're experiencing what is, straw phonation's not been around all that long. It's been quite revolutionary in the area of singing teaching, and it's fabulous. Everyone's doing it.
Anyone who knows what they're doing with their voice is doing that. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, up until a few months ago, I didn't even pay attention, and I think that's maybe that's the biggest part for me is just awareness. Just knowing and like being conscious of like, okay, I should probably not talk as much right now, or taking care of my voice between shooting videos. And some people might be thinking like I did when we first started talking. I was like, what's the big deal? Like, okay, it sounds a little bit raspy, but it doesn't really bother me. The next day it's fine again. Well, if you keep doing this, like it's not going to be fine the next day, and before long, like I have it, like even right now, I can feel it, but this, like it comes on for me so quickly now that for the past few years, I've just been talking, shooting videos. I've done over 3,500 videos personally in the past 10 years, not to mention all the meetings, sessions, teaching, instruction, consultations, family stuff, everything. Like I'm talking a lot, and now it doesn't take very much unfortunately, for my throat to start feeling the way it feels right now without me. But before I just keep pushing through it, never did anything. So I'm glad that you caught me before I needed to have surgery maybe another few years from now. So thank you for that.
I would like to think we caught you in time.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that that today's video and podcast is really timely for people, because it's the old adage, isn't it? It'll never happen to me. And yet every day of the week I work with people who it's happened to.
Yeah.
And this is a serious thing, that we want to make sure that video creators have healthy voices, because without it, it's virtually impossible probably for most channels to operate. If you the creator don't have a voice,
right,
your channel's probably done.
There are channels who do it, who hire voiceover actors or things like that. But for the vast majority of us, we either don't have the funds for that, or it's kind of not the content we're making. We need to be able to speak and talk and express ourselves on camera.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Dan was actually cool enough to put together a playlist of videos for you guys. It's not long, very consumable. Put a link to it in the show notes if you're listening to the audio of this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, or if you're watching the video here on YouTube, there's a link in the description. Also, go to a playlist of videos that he put together that will help you with some of these exercises and help you understand more and learn more about how to care for your voice and some of these things that you can do to really keep it healthy and sounding great and amazing on camera, so that you can engage your audience, and most importantly, well, maybe not importantly, as importantly, so you can continue to serve them and continue to make videos and be able to talk to them, and that you're pleasant to listen to and all of that. So go check that playlist out. There's a link down below in the show notes or in the description. You guys can check it out, and it's not very long. Like I said, you'll be able to cruise right through it and get tons of really great value from the videos that he's published over in his channel, specifically around these topics and issues that we're talking about here. So, and while you're over there, they should subscribe, right? Why should they subscribe, Dr. Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. They should subscribe, because everyone has a voice, and in keeping with the topic we've had today, I want everyone to keep their voice.
Yeah.
And I publish new videos every week, so would love people to engage and just get something out of the content.
Right. And it's not just about singing. That's what I used to think. Like, voice stuff was for people who wanted to sing and learn how to hit certain notes and use their voice like an instrument. I mean, that's obviously part of this. But for people like me and maybe people like you who are just speaking a lot, we're just talking, that phonality, not phonality, but that's
phonation.
Phonation, yeah.
Let me just quickly speak to that point. So, yeah, my channel, most people would traditionally think of it as a singing channel. For people who are watching this particular video and listening to the podcast, don't approach my channel as simply a singing channel, because many of the activities that I cover actually are completely transferable to speaking. If you think of speaking to singing is a bit like walking is to running. And so if you can learn to run well, it means that if that's going to impact on your walking.
Right.
And so if you can learn to sing, if you can take advantage of that heightened activity of singing, it is going to really have benefit for your speaking voice. And, I use these singing activities. A lot of the activities on there are singing, not all of them, but a lot of the activities really help people, preachers and presenters and a whole range of people who are only using them for talking. Yeah. So really good point.
Cool. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, Dr. Dan, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, so people can contact me through the channel via messaging, in comments on the videos. Also, people can grab me via my website, which is drdan.co, drdan.co, and people can get to me via contact page on the website. And I really do hope people will do that. We've got a great community over at Voice Essentials, really good community actually, and we'd love people to join in.
Awesome. And the community here at Video Creators is awesome as well. I want to, first of all, thank all the patrons over at patreon.com/videocreators who make it possible for me to hang out at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night with Dr. Dan over in Australia, and and be able to get content like this for you guys to really help you take your content, your voice, your videos, your audience to the next level. So if you're not a patron, we'd love to have you check it out. We are doing private calls with me once a month. I got guest experts coming on once a month who will do Q&A with you guys on a certain topic and help you with stuff. We got private forums. We've got exclusive content, all sorts of things, just all designed to help those of you guys who are serious about growing your channel and taking that next step and really reaching people and impacting their lives with your channel. So thank you for letting me here be a small part of that on the podcast and this video. Thank you for letting Dr. Dan and I hang out with you guys. Looking forward to reading your comments and your thoughts and your ideas and suggestions and everything you guys are going to be sharing with us down there. So thank you for hanging out. Subscribe if this is your first time here. We got new podcast episodes every Tuesday, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.